Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon already. So I thought this session, the title at least, I think is a interesting title. I hope I can explain the reason of this title in one of the slides that I have inside. But first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in networking and network security. Okay. My name is Javier Orellana. I'm the Chief Technologist in HP Services. I am in the advisory and professional services. And basically, I am in the global team supporting different geographies, different countries. So essentially, wherever is a possibility to help HP local teams in the countries, we are there. Yeah, the team is there. Yeah. So let me start. So I hope you read this confidential agreement. Probably you've seen it many places. This is the session ID. Please provide feedback. It's very useful for us, especially to improve for next year. Yeah. So that's basically the content I would like to cover in this 30 minutes session. So we will start with an introduction, very brief introduction. We will talk about data center. But honestly, it could be applied also into the edge or into the campus networking. But I focus for a moment on the data center because probably it's more clear. There are more customers, more use cases on the data center. But again, it's not only applied there. And then I will start talking about micro-segmentation. And probably many of you will know what is this micro-segmentation, and everybody more or less is familiar with that. But we will cover, we explain this. And then finally, our view about this next generation connectivity and a final wrap-up. Okay? So let's start. Essentially, what we see in the market, what we see with customers, is that when we deploy IT platforms, basically we have these building blocks. We have edge, we have data center or cloud, and we need a network to connect both. And we know that inside the edge we have networking, and inside the cloud we have networking. But basically, sometimes people missing this idea that everything needs to connect. Yeah. So the edge is essentially your factory, is your branches, your offices. It could be your autonomous car. It could be anything where a client, a user, needs to connect, needs to have an experience sharing or accessing those IT resources. While the cloud is basically your data center on-prem that could have a private cloud, or it could be your public cloud. It could be a co-location, essentially where you aggregate all or many of your resources. Okay? And basically what we see in the market is that typically you gather the data, the information from your business from the edge, you extract all this information, and you move it to the cloud where an AI engine will do, especially in the last few years, will do very clever things to extract the information that you need to run your business, yeah, to extract valuable information for your business. Security needs to be end-to-end. Sometimes the network is in the middle and is forgotten. The reality is that we need to make sure we secure everything end-to-end, edge, cloud, and the network in the middle. And of course, sustainability is a major catalyzer. Sustainability is something that nowadays customers is like mandatory to include the sustainability in terms of delivering a project for IT. Okay? So basically, this is the big picture, the strategy that we follow and the trend that we see in the market. And many customers also they are adapting to. Now, let's talk about data center. But again, this could be also applied to any other infrastructure in the cloud or in the edge. It could be even in the public cloud. The reality is that we have a workload, we have some infrastructure, and we have a perimeter. And that perimeter, usually we deploy some firewalls. That perimeter, we believe that everything that is outside that perimeter is untrusted. Everything that is outside that perimeter could create some harm in our infrastructure. And also, we believe that everything that is inside that perimeter, the east-west versus the north-south, the east-west is something you can trust. Because anyway, we cross the perimeter is the security, now it's inside, now we can trust it. And that's wrong. That's wrong. But this is something we see in the customers. We see in the customers' solutions when we do assessment that basically this is what still customer is running. They have a fantastic perimeter, but inside there is no security. They're just basically opening everything. Now, they are saying, yeah, but I have some security measures, like I do some segments, I do some VLANs, I separate those VLANs with subnets, I put some firewalls to cross those VLANs, I do some separation of the logical entities. I do BRFs, I make sure that no leaking between BRFs, but that's not enough. That's not enough. And we see that the majority of the traffic is around 80% is west traffic inside the perimeter, is where we see these attacks, these security threats happening. Okay? So we need to improve this. How do we improve it? We use micro-segmentation. What is the idea of micro-segmentation? The idea of micro-segmentation is I still have my logical router outside, I still have my perimeter firewall, but I want to make sure that inside, in the east-west traffic, very close to the workload, very close where I'm running my applications, I have a firewall also, I have a security. If you don't have that, you are missing, or you have the chance or the possibility that some lateral move affecting your services. Okay, because it's happening, yeah? So if you're not protecting inside, sometimes one machine, one VM, one container is compromised, and you know what? Next one is also compromised, all right? So the idea of moving the security right to the interface where the application is running, it's, I wouldn't say completely mandatory, but for critical applications, definitely it is. The applications that are running, they're using your data, that data is critical for you, make sure you have this micro-segmentation enabled. Now, how do we implement this micro-segmentation? There are few options in the market. Okay, let's start with one. This is probably the one that is better known, yeah? Let's put something, a virtual switch, something special in the hypervisor. Yeah, this is the VMware approach. Nothing wrong. Yeah, I mean, we have customers and we are helping customers deploying VMware solutions. They run NSX. They are using micro-segmentation to do this separation. What they are doing is I'm securing my hypervisor and everything that connects from the application into the hypervisor in this blue line, that is my perimeter. And I'm securing because every single VNIC from that VM is now secured. There is a tap, and I understand what happens on the traffic that is crossing that VM, and I can secure it. It's fine, it's okay, but there are some caveats. For instance, usually this is a thought for an all virtualized environment. The idea is you have an hypervisor everywhere. And VMware will say, yeah, no, but we have the NSX Edge appliance, and you can connect to the bare metal. Correct, but the idea of NSX, or the idea of, of VMware is, apologies, is the idea of VMware is that everything is virtualized. You build a cloud and everything running on the virtualization, okay? If you have bare metal, it could be a bit of a challenge. It could be solved, but it could be a bit of a challenge. But also, if you're running your security features on the hypervisor, you are consuming CPU cycles. You need to make sure that the amount of CPU power that these features take, it's not too high. Yeah? And there are ways to measure it. Yeah? But if you want to have this type of security, be careful because CPU cycles can be dropped and not dedicated to the application, which is the whole purpose of the customer. Yeah? All right, so that is the first model, the first approach. Let's go to the second one, agent-based. We can do micro-segmentation with agents. Yeah, we can put agents everywhere, and we can achieve this security directly on your VM, directly on your application. That's fantastic. With solutions like, for instance, Guardicore, you can basically understand the flows that they are happening in your data center, and you can understand all this information, and you can decide what you allow, what you stop, all right? But again, we have a problem here. Agents consume CPU cycles also, yeah? But also, sometimes it's not evident that you can deploy agents everywhere. There are some VMs that don't support it, some applications, some workload that they don't support it. Customers sometimes, they work with third parties, and those third parties, they are not allowing to deploy agents inside, so it could be a problem. However, the great advantage here is you can mix and match hypervisor-based with bare metal. So again, some caveats to consider, but again, we have solutions, we have customers using this approach, and we believe it's also something valid. Let's go to the third one. Before I explain a little bit on this third one, let me talk a little bit about what happens, what traditionally customers are doing. I know I need to protect my east-west traffic, so what I will do is I will send my traffic from one server into another server, but before I do that, I cross one of my east-west firewalls. That's fine, but this is not efficient. Yeah? And we know that if we need to do this many times, and that in a cloud environment happens many times, at the end is not efficient. Okay? What if we could use the Aruba 10,000 CX family? Okay? Probably you are familiar with these devices. If not, they are in the shop floor in the Aruba section. But what is special about this switch? This switch, it has a DPU embedded inside. Okay? Essentially, a DPU, this data processing unit, it's allowing you to capture the data that is crossing the switch, and you can inspect what's happening, and you understand what's happening, and you can have many use cases for using a Aruba 10,000 switch. Okay? One of those use cases is why you don't use it as a firewall? Why you don't secure directly on your top of the rack? It's perfectly possible. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. By the way, the perimeter firewall that you can put here, the east-west firewall on those, when you move this firewall into the top of the rack, you don't need now the east-west firewall. Maybe you want to keep the firewall for the north-south communication, but you don't need now a dedicated firewall and the need to cross between the firewall and the different workloads. Everything happens on the switch. Okay? Now, this firewall is layer 4, okay? It's not layer 7. But you know what? I mean, if you talk to customers using NSX and the security features, they are using exactly the same thing, layer 4. I never talked to a customer using layer 7 with NSX. But again, it can be done. I know, and you know about this new, let's say, licensing model that VMware is offering, that if you want to have NSX beyond pure networking, you need to have an additional license. If you want to use this NSX for layer 4 and move it into layer 7, you need to have another license. Okay, so here everything is included on these, let's say, 10,000 Aruba 10,000 switches, layer 4 firewalling. So you don't need to grow your, I mean, this slide is very similar to the previous one. The difference is now you can connect your legacy, your existing workloads into the new environment. As long as the flow crosses the switch, the top of the switch, you are securing also outside, okay? But the idea is that, or the good thing here is that you can start small on your data center, and slowly as the data center is maturing and the switches are reaching the end life support, you can replace as needed. Okay, but the idea is you can start small and you can end up with the big environment with the 10K running as a top of the rack switch. What is good about this? You are moving your security outside of the hypervisor, outside of your compute. You are moving your security basically being now hypervisor agnostic. you could run a micro-segmentation using only HPE VM Essentials, yeah, our hypervisor here. And you could have two VMs sitting on the same subnet, and you can micro-segment those VMs, okay? We have actually in the booth where I am, in the 507 booth, this demo build, yeah? So you can do micro-segmentation in HPE VM Essentials, and that works fine, yeah? But also, you can have a mixed match of different hypervisors. You could have your VMware environment and your VM Essentials environment all working together. And you could have a layer 2 segment, for instance, crossing both domains. You could have, because at the end, that is built on your infrastructure in the network side, and you are applying the micro-segmentation on the network side. So no power cycle, so no CPU cycles, and you are using the compute only to run your applications, and you dedicated the switches only for networking and security, okay? And again, we have this built in the demo, and we can interconnect these two environments with the same security policies. Now, we have already customers that they are interested. We are not going to promote customers to move away from VMware. We are not going to do that. I mean, we are still delivering projects with VMware, and we are doing customers interested in using VMware Cloud Foundation. We do that. But if customers are interested in looking for alternatives to VMware, we can help. Yeah? And we have customers that we are basically planning these migrations to move from VMware to VM Essentials, for instance. Yeah? And again, because all connectivity happens on the fabric, all the security happens on the fabric, they are okay. Everything is end-to-end protected while we are doing this transition, while we are doing this migration. Okay? Now, let's improve the solution a little bit more. Yeah? We have an integration with Guardicore. I mentioned it before that Guardicore is basically micro-segmentation based on agents. And that is typically what they do. However, we have this integration with Guardicore and the Aruba 10,000, where now, besides using the switches, the 10,000 switches as a firewall, we can also do telemetry and capture that information that is only the headers, yeah, but the information that is crossing the firewall, we can forward that into Guardicore. And Guardicore basically will analyze that information and can identify, can pinpoint where it could be a risk, where there is a suggestion to have a new firewall rule. Basically, Guardicore has an AI engine that helps you in building this micro-segmentation. Can you do micro-segmentation without Guardicore? Yes, we can. Can we improve the solution and help make it more usable in terms of more user-friendly? With Guardicore, we can do that. Guardicore has this console, and in this console, it can tell you, hey, you have a flow that is not expected, you need to do something. I can suggest some rules that you may need to apply. And when you decide to do that, you apply those rules in the PSM, which is the manager of the 10,000 switches fabric, okay? And those rules are basically then deployed to the fabric, okay? I didn't mention before, but I think it's important. In order to have this fabric managed, you need to have two consoles. One is the Aruba Fabric Composer to manage the connectivity, and the other one is PSM, which is basically the security GUI for building your security. We can have these two decoupled, separated, because sometimes in customers we have a team for NetOps and we have a team for SecOps, and they prefer to have these managed separately. But if you want to combine both of them together, it's possible. There is an API integration, and whatever you do in one, you can have this, let's say, transfer into PSM. You want to keep both separated, you can do it, you can have both separated, okay? But sorry, I missed this one in the previous slide. PSM is basically the manager of your security for this type of solutions. Now, the other good thing here is that this environment, you can mix and match. You could have your environment where you have your 10K doing telemetry. So basically, it's an agentless. You don't need an agent to be deployed in this environment to understand what is happening. But you could have also an environment where it's agent-based, okay? And because everything is going to be analyzed in Guardicore, they're going to see everything end-to-end. They're going to basically combine these security policies across both domains. And it's up to you to decide when one workload requires an agent or one workload doesn't require an agent because maybe you cannot deploy an agent, okay? So again, this type of solution is something that we find in some customers, and is a good way, in my view, to achieve this micro-segmentation, okay? So this potential to extract the telemetry information from those switches and do something interesting with that information, like for instance, what Guardicore is doing, that opens the door to many innovations. Yeah? You can do many things with that information. You could even have a security piece that can detect what exactly is happening in terms of those flows and can pinpoint if there is a security risk, okay? So again, gathering this telemetry and do something interesting, meaningful, useful for your business, this is what we call is the fourth generation data center. We want to understand what's happening on your infrastructure. You want to understand what is happening across your infrastructure. So give me all this information. I need this information, not just for my IT department, but also for my business, because I want to leverage that information. That is the fourth generation data center. So why we don't do this, why we don't apply this concept of gathering telemetry, gathering all information we can from our IT infrastructure and connect and understand the whole picture. You remember the slide we had at the beginning, yeah? We had the edge, we had the cloud, we have the secure network. We use SaaS solutions, for instance, to secure the connectivity between edge and hybrid cloud. But why we don't just gather all this telemetry, this huge amount of data, okay? We analyze it with an AI engine, we build this, and we have this possibility to understand what is happening, and we take some decisions. Yeah, we do some automation, some orchestration, and as you heard this morning, in the keynote from Antonio, agentic AI is here. Yeah? Aruba Central are now already engaged with agentic AI, and agentic AI is fantastic in terms of deciding what you can do on your network if something happens. Okay? So this concept of let's understand what happened on the infrastructure, and let's understand what is wrong or what could potentially be wrong, and then they take a decision and automatically feed it back into my infrastructure. So I can have, as Antonio mentioned this morning, these operators running 24 hours, working, inspecting my network, understanding that my IT infrastructure beyond the network, my IT infrastructure is all good, okay? And of course, everything needs to be, as I started the presentation, end-to-end secure. So again, this setup is also helping us in having this end-to-end security, avoiding cybersecurity threats, okay? Now, I finish here. This is basically a brief summary of my business unit. This is what we do. We focus on edge connectivity projects, we do cloud connectivity projects, we do network security, we do network automation, we work very closely with Aruba, we work also very closely with many third parties. Basically, we are end-to-end solutioning. Yeah? So we do from advice, assessment, design, run, integrate, and also we operate as a service. Okay? So we can finish here. Yeah? Thank you very much.